You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hello, mamas. Welcome back to another awesome episode of the Mama Work It podcast. So glad you're joining us. In case you're new around here, I'm your host, Marissa Lonick, working mom of 4 kids and founder of Mama Work It, where we support women in the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. I am thrilled to introduce you to our guest today, JJ DiGeronimo. After 25 years in the tech industry, JJ hit a wall from overproducing, over-delivering, and over-committing. She was questioning all aspects of her life and felt like she was just her own worst enemy. She tried drinking more wine, sabotaging her marriage, and even considered driving away and never returning. Eventually, JJ realized that she needed to make a change. She started by seeking professional help, and she began a journey of self-discovery. She learned how to set boundaries, take care of herself, and she also began to explore her spiritual side and connect with her inner power. JJ's transformation was profound. She went from feeling overwhelmed to feeling totally connected to a higher purpose, which led to a determination to share her findings with more women today. So now JJ is a successful author, speaker, and spiritual liaison. She shares her story and her strategies with women all over the world, and she is on a mission to help women raise their frequencies and empower their future impact. JJ, I am so excited to be having this conversation. Thank you for being here.
Oh, so much to talk about. So happy to be here.
Great. Well, I'm always curious with any guest I have on the show, but can you just tell us a little bit more about that journey that you went on as a mom, as a professional, and kind of how it landed you where you are today?
Hard as heck. I'll just put that out there. I think I was just so shocked because I always thought like I could have it all, and I was well on my journey. I didn't have my children until I was in my mid-30s, so I was well into my career. Most of my career was on planes, and I don't know, having children, like everyone's like, oh, my children sleep in 6 weeks and this. And yeah, that didn't happen for me. Like I didn't sleep for 4 years. I don't think so. And, I still had so much pressure at work to hit on all the cylinders, most of which was put on by myself. And I still wanted to be a great mom. If I chose to have kids, like I wanted to show up for them. But I was so surprised how much work, how much I had to juggle, and how much I lost myself in my own yeses.
Yeah, I bet. So on today's episode, we're talking about calendars and commitments. And a lot of our listeners might be feeling maybe how you felt before you went on this journey to really level up your boundaries, your self-care, all the things that you were able to really work on and improve during that time. So why does something super small, like paying attention to your yeses, the amount of stuff on your calendar, why does that matter so much?
Well, we give away our time so freely. I mean, people slide in our inbox, they jump in our IMs, they might even send us a chat. Can you just do this? Or do you mind working on this? Or, I don't have time for this. Can you do this? And I find myself and many other people say, yes, sure, without even really thinking about what am I saying yes to? How much time is it going to take? Does it align to where I am or where I want to go? And is it the right ask for me right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I've heard in the past, you should never say yes on the spot. You should take a deep breath or even just say, oh, let me get back to you on that, because it's just a good habit to get into so that you're not overcommitting or committing to something you really don't want to commit to in that moment just because you're excited or, you're feeling that energy from the other person or whatever it is. What's your advice when it comes to that?
Yeah, for me, anything that's going to take more than 4 hours, I definitely say, that's a big ask. It's more than 4 hours. I would love to do it, but I have a lot of things in play right now, and I want to make sure I can give it the right attention.
Mm-hmm. Good answer. Yeah. I know it's hard for a lot of people to say no, especially if they're used to saying yes all the time. So that's a really great way to put it.
And I've talked about this since my first book in 2010. I had this amazing mentor slash woman that helped me really identify how to move through my day. Like, of course, I read The Power of Now and I've read The 5 Hour Work Week and I've read all these books, but I just was like, how do you do this with a busy schedule, a leadership position? I had a women's group at the time. I just had a lot of irons in the fire, and a lot of them I really enjoyed, but it was depleting me. Like when I would get sick, I would get so sick. And I feel like for many of us, we just say yes, yes, yes. And she really laid it out for me. And I captured that along with many other insights from women that I interviewed for my first book, The Working Woman's GPS, when the plan to have it all leads you astray. And I put together this Power of No chart. And it not only is a chart, it's a chapter. I show you exactly how to fill it out. You can download it for free. And I have shared it with thousands and thousands and thousands of professionals over the last decade. And it's just one of those charts that everyone comes back to and is like, oh my gosh, that helped me so much. Because oftentimes, if you want to have more influence and impact than you have today, you have to have time in your schedule to create a launching pad to get there.
Yeah, I love that idea of like a chart, a system to be able to lean on for that so that you're not having to reinvent the wheel each time. So let's definitely make sure that we link that in today's show notes so people can access that. Love that you're gifting that away. Thank you. So for those people listening who may not know much about like frequency and vibrations and kind of these are just terms they don't hear of very often. Tell us a little bit more about what that is. And then as a follow-up to that, tell us like, can we really control these things in our lives?
That's really funny. Can we control it? Because I laugh because it's like, what can we control these days, right? Everything is just bonkers. But it's funny because in 2010, when I was writing my first book and I was in the wrong job and, I didn't have the right daycare and help for my children, I didn't realize I was swimming in a mud puddle. I didn't realize it because everybody that was around me was sort of complaining and upset and not aligned the right way either. I didn't know it until years later of looking back. But I got to a point in my life where I was like, this is not working for me. Like what I was in was not working. And I've turned to spiritual teachers most of my adult life and saying, like, how can I do this better? Or what am I missing? Or what am I not thinking of? I'm an avid reader and listener. And I just felt like I was just not getting the cliff notes of how to kind of move in the direction I wanted because I was so stuck in the mud. And so I started keeping track of everything I said. It was one of the things someone told me is like, are you in the plus or the minus column? And I was like, what? They're like, are you in the plus or minus column? Are you mostly positive or mostly negative? Of course, my first response was, I'm positive. But the reality was I wasn't. And I started keeping track of what I would say out loud, what I would say in my head, what I would communicate with others. Most of the things I was talking about was not that positive, but it wasn't like something that you would be embarrassed to talk about. It was things like the coffee machine is empty. Who does not fill up the coffee machine? Or I went doing an errands run. I had to sit in line for 6 minutes waiting for one person to find their license in their purse. Like it doesn't sound negative, but when you talk like that all day long, it's like you're really just draining every bit of energy you have out of your body because you're giving so much to your situation. And I really had to shift my energy. And the first way I did it was really paying attention to what I said out loud. Like, is it more positive or is it more negative? Then I started paying attention to what I would say to myself in the inside. Was I supporting myself? Was I giving myself, positive accolades, or was I tearing myself down on a regular basis? Then I had to pay attention to what I talked about with other people, right? Am I talking about why I'm stuck in the airline, queue and I can't get out and I can't leave this airport? Am I just constantly sharing negativity or am I having more gratitude for what is working? And over time and years, it took a couple years, it took me a long time to shift out of that everything's happening to me mentality to life is happening for me mentality.
Yeah, I love that change in perspective I try to remind myself of that all the time, especially when it's something challenging I'm facing, because I know on the other side of this, it's going to make sense. Once it's
Mm.
over. It's hard to be stuck in the mud, as you said. It's hard to see clearly when you're there. Obviously, right? It's making your glasses all dirty and it's hard to see, but it really does often, when you look back at challenging times in your life, it really does make sense afterwards of why that needed to happen.
Yeah, and that stuckness sometimes creates great strength. And I think sometimes we don't realize we're even stuck, or if we are stuck, we don't know how the heck to get out. And for me, I feel like I was never really trained on how to be in the present moment. I wasn't really trained to look at life as an opportunity,
Mhm.
not as like this race that I was in for so long. Like I have to get there. And I talk a lot about this in my third book, Seeking, is I really was chasing the oasis of success for a long time because I thought it was going to bring me so much happiness.
Yeah, so much good stuff there. I'm curious, when you were going through this journey of trying to change that, and I'm assuming this is what you mean by the vibrations, the frequency of like the negative thoughts versus the positive thoughts, right? Of like what you're saying to yourself, what you're saying to others, all of those examples that you mentioned. When you were going through that process of sort of shifting that to a more positive space, what did that process look like? I mean, obviously the awareness of what you were saying, but would you then change that thought, change that um, verbiage completely, or would you just be aware of it and kind of move on to something else? Like, what did that actually look like?
Oh, I've had to do a lot of inside work. And I would say that, I always thought that success came on the outside. But what I've realized now, I just turned 50, is that success comes from the inside. And success is really about how you approach life, what you talk about, what you pay attention to, what you engage in. And we have a choice minute by minute, like literally minute by minute, of how we are going to show up, what we're going to pay attention to, how we're going to communicate, whether we just talk to ourselves or we're sharing information with other people. And I will tell you that I've worked at this for a decade. It's taken me, like, obviously it hasn't taken me a decade, but I've been working at this for a long time. And I would say that I'm really seeing the benefits now of it. And I still get triggered. We all get triggered. And so I think, like, for many of us, we have to pay attention to how we are moving through life, because our external is really just a reflection of what's happening on the inside.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's go back to that calendar, because that's what we're really kind of zooming in on in this episode. And the question is your calendar energizing your life? So, how can somebody look at their calendar and spot on know the answer to that?
Oh, I'm an engineer by trade. So everything I do is plus, minus, and slash, like in a spreadsheet. So I would say that I really just list out the chart that I'm sharing is you just list out all your commitments, and you can do it by day, by week, by quarter, however you want to do it. And I have all of the columns. And one of the columns is, do I get good energy from this commitment? Plus or minus. And if you're not sure, you can put a slash. But I mean, if you really just sit there and be honest with yourself, like, do I get good energy from this commitment? Like, if you're really just sitting there, you kind of know. So you can have some slashes, but you really should get a gauge of, like, are you in the right job? Are you aligned to the right relationships? Are you aligned to the right activities? Because when I found myself in that mud puddle, I had a lot of negatives in the commitments I've committed myself to, in ways that it was definitely stretching me, but not in a positive way. Like, I didn't like the work I was doing, and I didn't like the team I was on. And I feel like, yes, I probably attracted some of that, absolutely. But I had to figure out how to get myself out of that, like rung by rung.
Hmm. I'm curious, do you feel like that was working for you in one season of life, and then as we always are growing and evolving, it just didn't? Or were you just not noticing that it wasn't working for you for the longest time?
That is a great question. So it did work for me for a long time. So when I'd always been in a corporate role, I'd always been in a sort of a technology role. And when I had two young children, I moved into a sales role, which is probably the best role anybody can ever take, because it really teaches you a lot about how to get business done, how to handle no's, how to really kind of move through when things aren't working in your favor. And I took that role because I needed to be local. I had to go to doctor's appointments. I had to be around when my kids were real little. And after 3.5 years, I was ready to move into a strategy role. But unfortunately, my brand in that company associated me with a sales role, and nobody that was really hiring for that position knew me any other way. And so I had to really work on shifting my brand to get that new position. So that started off like really the basis of my whole second book is how do you turn that no into a yes when you really want to get to that next level in your career? And I would say it did work for me for a long time. But then there was a time where I changed and I was growing in a new way. And I just knew I had to get out of that role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's important to say and mention because it's not counteracting the past 5, 10, 15 years of your career if you decide today that this is no longer fitting you. Maybe it fit you then and it doesn't fit you now. You know, we fluctuate in physical size, we fluctuate in interest, we fluctuate in just relationships, in motherhood, whether you're becoming a mom, whether your kids are growing older and you need to sort of step into a different role of being a mom in that season. So keep that in mind if you're listening and you're like, my whole life has been a lie. If you're hearing this, it's not true. It's just sort of the evolution of who we're becoming throughout it. And we're always shifting and changing and evolving.
Absolutely. And, this is how universe tells you you're ready to move on when what used to work doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like motherhood was sort of a catalyst in some of these shifts and changes and on this journey for you. What did motherhood specifically teach you when it came to your schedule, your calendar, your commitments, your vibration, your frequency, all of that?
It's a huge question. Well, I will tell you that motherhood has taught me more about myself than anything else I've ever done in my life. And I feel like my kids have taught me more than I've taught them, just because they teach you patience and unconditional love, and that a lot of stuff that you're doing at work, like they don't care. They don't care who you are outside of the house. They don't care what accolades you have. They just don't care. And I feel like it's been a very humbling experience, but in the most positive way, because it has taught me, oh gosh, it has taught me so much about like just like how they look at life, what questions they ask, like what they need and how they give love. And I feel like it's one of those things that you're never going to return once you have children. But if you don't have children, you don't know what you're missing or what you're not part of either. And so whatever you choose to do as a mother, whether you're mothering your animals or mothering your family, mothering comes in all different ways. And I feel like I have learned with my children, especially as they become teenagers now, that I have to share with them that, you cannot control how other people treat you. You cannot convince other people to be nice to you. You cannot really spend a lot of energy worrying about how other people interact with you. All you can manage is yourself and your own energy. And if you work every day to create high energy and be a positive force in the world, you will generally attract positive energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such good advice. How old are your kids now? I'm just curious.
Soon to be 16 and almost 18.
Okay. Yeah. So what would you say is the best tool you learned over the years on this journey that helps you or has helped you be not just a better mother, caregiver, a professional, but also just like a better human overall?
I think being in the present moment. Like I didn't know how to be in the present moment. I was so busy delivering, doing, being, striving, going, getting. And it wasn't until 2016 that I was encouraged to take mindfulness training, that I really wasn't even a great mindfulness student when I started, that it really taught me how to be in the present moment, how to be completely present, not planning for the future, reflecting on the past. And I feel like that is one of the greatest gifts that I've spent the time creating for myself that has impacted not only my family, but also my work.
Mm-hmm. And do you do that via meditation? How do you get into that zone?
Well, I had to learn how to meditate because I was somebody who would meditate but made my grocery list or made, basically created a presentation while I was meditating. So I didn't really understand that the dynamics of meditation until I took mindfulness. So mindfulness was my ability to create space between my thoughts And I needed to do that before I could meditate. And I thought I was meditating, but I wasn't. And so I now can meditate very quickly or get into a meditation zone because I can just sit in complete peace without really hanging on to any thoughts. And I can do it at my desk. And I do it by just like tapping my fingers, snapping my fingers, tapping my toes, and really just allowing myself to be in the present moment and allow myself to ground or get the light from above. But it took me a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that I was like, okay, my kids are sleeping after 2 weeks. Okay, I learned how to meditate after 2 days. Like, it's taken a long time.
Yeah. I do think, I mean, they call it a practice because it takes practice. It takes a lot of, getting used to. And I totally get it. I used to be really bad at it too. I still feel like if I get out of practice where I'm not doing it super consistently, even when I am doing it consistently, some days are just harder than others to get there.
Oh, they sure are. Because we just have so many things. I mean, when you think about all the things you touched, and like, I love my husband so much, but he has a very full-time job, but he just asked my kids have they been going to the dentist regularly over the last couple of years? Like, yes, of course they have, because I scheduled it. Like every other mother probably listening to this. Like my husband has no idea about regular doctor's appointments. And my kids were laughing. They're like, yeah, Dad, where have you been? But it's just like the amount of things that mothers have to do is just could be overwhelming at times, especially at different ages of your children. And so I think some days are going to be harder than others.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you are trying to meditate and you're making your grocery list as you're doing it, we gotta get more practice in there. That's not it.
Yes, mindfulness is really creating space. And so the way I think about it is your thoughts are on a conveyor belt. And when you practice mindfulness, you can actually take a couple steps back from that conveyor belt and just really observe what you're thinking about most of the time. And if people ask you to do things, how does that conveyor belt shift? Or if you are poked or, kind of tested in different ways throughout your day, what shows up on that conveyor belt? What story comes to you that maybe happened in third grade or when you were 27? And when you can create that space that you don't have to grab on to any one of those thoughts at any time, you've now created space where you can just be in the moment. And that's what meditation is just being in the moment without grabbing onto any thought. And I think I mentioned when I joined the call, like now I'm working on manifestation and channeling, which is, the next step for me of how do I bring in a wider array of information that may not be privy to me at this human level. And I think for many of us, finding that space to create space is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I used to be one of those people that's like, I don't have time for that. And now I prioritize it almost every day. And it's just become such a routine part of my life. It is so possible, no matter how busy you think you are, to create that space, to create the space, as you said. So.
And you just approach life so differently. Like when things blow up or things fall apart, which they do all the time,
Mm-hmm.
You become more inquisitive. Instead of being reactive and taking that piece of energy off the conveyor belt and shaking it up, be like, I can't believe this happened to me. Sometimes when you're practice meditation on a more regular basis, you're like, I wonder why that's happening. Right? Yeah. Instead of responding to the driver that hit your car or the person that cut you in line or the bank line that shut the second you got there, just being more observant of, I wonder why that's happening to me. Being like a real inquisitive, having an inquisitive nature to how you move through your day and what's happening. And I find that the calmer I am, the more things fall in my favor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely makes you a little more zen for sure. Well, good. Well, we're going to move on now to just some random questions, JJ. We're going to ask you some things just to get to know you a little bit more personally. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What's your go-to like get it done song, your most motivating jam?
Anything Pink. I love Anything Pink. I'll listen to her anytime, anywhere. She's a get it done kind of gal.
Yeah, I do love me some Pink. She was just on tour. I saw people went to that show. It looked really, really good. What about like guilty pleasure TV show?
The Bachelor
Hmm.
and the Paradise one. I love it is completely mindless. And my son and I watch it and we talk about like different dynamics and psychology of why people do what they do. So it's a fun my son and I watch it and we just talk about people and how they react to situations.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you guys are bonding over The Bachelor. That's cool. What if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life? What would it be? Calories don't count.
I mean, I love chocolate, don't get me wrong, but I am a crazy person over avocados. I eat avocado every single day. I love it.
I totally understand that. We always have avocados here. And if you ask my 4-year-old what his favorite foods are, the top 3, avocado toast makes it. So,
I
yeah.
just love it.
What's something most people don't know about you?
I just really appreciate quiet time. I am super quiet. I do a lot of stuff out there, but really behind the scenes, I'm by myself a lot or I'm reading. I'm a big reader, listener of
Hmm.
books.
Yeah. Do you have like a favorite book?
Oh my gosh, everyone I'm reading, every single book I read, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is it right now. So I'm reading 3 books right now, mostly listening. I do listen to a lot of books so I can do stuff in my kitchen
Yeah.
or laundry. I'm always listening to books. And even when I go to the grocery store, I listen to books.
Yeah, I'm a big listener too. I do that like while I'm walking or running or the laundry thing. It helps with that too, because there's always laundry to
Mm.
fold around here.
I know 4 kids. I can't even, I did get my kids to start doing laundry at 8. So, and I would highly suggest it.
Yeah, I got to join that club for sure. All right, finally, what's one app you cannot live without?
Audibles.
Audible. Yeah, awesome.
Hmm.
Good. All right, well, tell our listeners where they can find you. I know you've got a new book. Tell us a little bit more about that and where they can find that, and then we will wrap up.
Oh my gosh, that's great. I appreciate the time. I will add the links so you'll have them below. You can click on them, but it's jjdigeronimo.com, which is not easy to spell, /power of no. You can download the chart, the chapter, the video. It really is like a 15-minute learning, which will impact the next 15 years of your life. It's incredible. And my new book, Seeking, I'm super happy about this book. This is really the idea of working off the side of your desk to really find Zen in your day. And I've included 74 key findings to raise your energy, sidestep your self-doubt, and raise your frequency.
Amazing. I can't wait to read it myself. Well, thank you so much for being a guest, JJ.
Thank you, Marissa, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.